On today's episode of the Locked On Texan podcast, Cody and I discuss the depth situation for the Houston Texans, and we're joined by the longtime friend Aaron Wilson of Pro Football Network. That is going to be a very interesting conversation. Before we do anything, Cody, start the show.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily Houston Texans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to a Wednesday edition of the Locked On Texan podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm John Hickman. This is Cody Davis, here to talk about the Houston Texans. Before we do, midweek, Cody, Wednesday, hump day, halfway through the week, work, writing articles, driving in Houston's traffic-infested inner city. Gas is going down. There's a lot to be happy about, a lot to be sad about. With the Houston Texans, there is still optimism. And I think Sunday, I'm going to say it now here on Wednesday's show, I think Sunday they get the job done in Chicago, playing against the Bears. A fun matchup. Justin Fields, Davis Mills. Those two quarterbacks, I think, have been linked together the most. I know we like to compare Davis Mills to the rest of those first-round quarterbacks from the 2021 draft class. However, when I look at the rest of those quarterbacks, Justin Fields was the one that went into the more disgusting situation in terms of roster, in terms of management, in terms of a franchise. And so when I look at Davis Mills coming into his situation here in Houston, David Culley, Tyrod Taylor goes down, Tim Kelly, bad play calling, no cap space, not a lot of weapons, and then thrown into the fire to play football, starting roughly around 10 games last year. That wasn't ideal. So the two least likely ideal quarterbacks from last year's draft that are starting, not talking about those other bums, has had a lot in common. But we got to talk about the depth situation for the Houston Texans. Now, Justin Britt, Kevin Pierre-Louis, they will be going on IR. Scott Quisenberry, who I think played very good in his debut as starting center for the Houston Texans, did a very good job on Sunday. But when I look at the Texans' depth chart right now, it is not that good, Cody. And I'll tell you my biggest issue with it. It doesn't allow for guys to get any breaks in between on the field or not. The offensive line is not one of those units that you would expect to get many breaks. You are expecting those five guys to be able to play majority of the game as starters. However, let's look at the wide receiver situation. Tyler Johnson has not played the first 2 weeks of the season. He's coming in, so they wanted to get him acclimated to this offense. But that doesn't make sense to me because O.J. Howard has also played, and he came in right around the same time, if not later. But Brandon Cooks, Nico Collins, Chris Moore, Tyler Johnson, Philip Dorsett. Of course, we've seen Chris Conley get elevated twice. However, he is not on the active roster right now or the depth chart. And then I look at the lineman situation. You have Justin McCray, but he's backing up either guard, right guard, or left guard. He's backing up for the guard position. Charlie Heck and Austin Ducelis is the backup tackles. And then you look at Scott Quisenberry, as of right now, is the only starting center for the Houston Texans. I do believe that they're trying to call up another player. So offensively, where we've seen the struggles with, Cody, I think this team may have some fatigue issues that set in against the Broncos, may set in against the Chicago Bears, and there may be an issue for them throughout the year.
Yeah, but most of that is the Texans' own doing, because when I take a look at this backfield situation, once again, why is Darwin Ogunbowale still listed as the third running back? And look, I understand it. I get it. You know, I come on this show almost every single week, it seemed like. And every time we talk about this depth chart situation, I always question, not only is why is Rex Burkhead still on this roster, but at the same time, he isn't giving you anything. And when you go back and you take a look at Sunday's game, Dameon Pierce got all of the carries, and Rex Burkhead didn't get anything. And that's why I'm a little bit confused, because how are you going to let Rex Burkhead be your top carrier in week 1? Then, of course, I understand you go and make some adjustments, but week 2, you don't give the man no type of carries? Like, that's kind of odd to me. And I understand it. I get it. Tyler Johnson, John, you came on this show. People are talking about it out there in them Texans Twitter streets, as you like to say. I understand it. I get it. This is a young man who is still trying to get acclimated into the Texans and what they like to do on the offensive side of the ball. But at the end of the day, John, for the second week in a row, everyone has been talking about the quote-unquote lack of weapons that the Houston Texans have, and you have a pretty quality wide receiver in Tyler Johnson right there that's a healthy scratch every single week. What's the deal with that? So, I'm at the point now I really don't look too much into this whole entire depth chart, because I mean, if you take a look at it as of right now, Tyler Johnson is listed as the 5th wide receiver based off of this depth chart. He will be playing in Chicago come week 3, but I'm expecting another healthy scratch from Tyler Johnson. So John, and then you still got Justin Britt starting and clearly something is going on with him.
He's been put on IR, so he's been
putting on IR. But at this point, guys, just tell us what's going on with Justin Britt. I mean, at the end of the day, this is not a franchise starting center. This would actually make more sense if this was Seattle and this was the production that Justin Britt was given for majority of his career in Seattle. Like, come on now, guys. But John, I understand it. I get it. Yes, there's a lot of lack of production, but at the same time, in terms of like the Rex Burkhead situation, in terms of the Tyler Johnson situation, some of this are the Houston Texans' own doing.
Absolutely. And listen, I'm not complaining about not seeing Rex Burkhead, and I don't know why you are complaining.
I know. I'm not complaining that I'm not seeing. I'm saying that it doesn't make sense how week 1, that is your lead running back, and week 2, if he is listed as your second running back, why all of a sudden you did not give him any snaps coming out of the backfield? And if that's the case, and you take a look at around the league, we're in a time in the league where we see a lot of two-headed running backs in the backfield. And of course, Dameon Pierce, that's going to be your lead back, but who's going to be the number 2 back? Who's going to give him the breather?
The biggest, and I'm glad you said that, because even though this is a running back in Dameon Pierce who didn't get a lot of carries in college and has fresh legs, which is one of the pluses when you look at him being one of those 4th-round picks, and why they like him so much, because he doesn't have a lot of wear and tear on his legs. However, this is still the NFL. Dare Ogunbowale only played in 1 snap on Sunday. And then you look at Rex Burkhead's situation, and to point out what you said, from week 1 to week 2, there's a huge drop-off, and there's no production there to justify him on this team whatsoever. And so the entire offseason and preseason, my main issue with the Houston Texans was, and it's showing right now, is that they are not bringing in playable players. And you said Tyler Johnson is I don't know, respectable or quality.
Quality wide receiver.
We don't know that, honestly. We don't know how much of a quality wide receiver he is. Yes, I think he may be worth quality for the Houston Texans because of the lack of receivers on this team right now. They sent Johnny Johnson III and Jamie Camp down to the practice squad. I would expect at some point throughout the season to see those guys play football as well for the Houston Texans. But the depth issue for Houston is not only is there not talent, but now you are going to fatigue your guys out. And fatigue brings physical mistakes. Fatigue brings mental errors and mistakes. Even when I look at the defensive side of the ball, Jalen Petrie, Jonathan Owens, Christian Kersey, Steven Nelson all played in 100% of the defensive snaps. Kamu Grugier-Hill played in 99% of the defensive snaps. And Derek Stingley, who only missed about 5 snaps, played in 94 of the defensive snaps. That's a problem somewhat. For you look at your two rookie DBs early in the season, you really want a rotation. That's the problem. Like, Eric Murray is still on this roster. He hasn't played. They have guys that when you look back at it, again, you wonder, you scratch your head, why are they still on this roster? And fatigue, ladies and gentlemen, may end up being an issue. By the way, I do want to mention that Jonathan Owen, who leads the league in tackles, what I wanted to see from him between preseason and now wasn't necessarily tackling. He actually is a very good tackler with his form and technique, was coverage. And I do think there may be an issue, whether it may be communication or just not being at the spot quick enough or not being able to make a play better than the next man you're trying to stop from Jonathan Owens. And so that is something that I will keep my eye on throughout the year. But again, to bring it back to the depth chart for the Houston Texans, not only is it confusion for the lack of talent, but now, which it was before the season started, there is a confusion of lack of players at certain positions. As the Houston Texans gear up for Week 3's matchup against the Chicago Bears, you can also gear up for this fall, especially when you think about needing the right people on your team to help your small business fire on all cylinders. LinkedIn Jobs is here to make it easier to find people you want to talk to faster and for free. Create a job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach your network and beyond to the world's largest professional network of over 800 million people. Then add your job and the purple hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring so your network can help you find the right people to hire. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you want to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus the leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Did you guys know every week nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Your chances are much higher with LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back in, ladies and gentlemen, to this Wednesday installment of Locked On Texans. And as promised, we got our brother, our guy, Mr. Aaron Wilson, one of, if not the best NFL insider that you can ever run across. Of course, he's a part of Pro Football Network. Aaron, what's going on? And welcome back to Locked On Texans.
Hey, thanks, Cody. Appreciate the warm introduction. Always good to be on Locked On Texans. Appreciate having me on.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Aaron, let's jump right into it. The last couple of days has been kind of weird in terms of what is going on with Justin Britt. We thought that Lovie Smith was going to give us a real update last Friday, but over the last couple of days, you know, you've been in the press conferences just like me, still haven't heard anything. What can you actually share about Justin Britt as of right now?
Right. Yeah, Cody, it's very similar to what I reported last week. These are personal reasons related to football, why he is away from the team, and it's a non-football illness. And he is dealing with personal issues, and the team is letting him have some time and space and privacy to contemplate his options. And obviously when a player is displeased with his performance the way that Justin was after the first game against the Colts, where he had a false start. He caused a false start. He allowed some pressure. He had some problems blocking in the open field. Just wasn't moving very well. It causes you to take stock, Cody. So you look at everything, you evaluate it, and my understanding is that it was very upsetting to him. You could probably tell from that press conference the previous Tuesday after the Colts game how Justin felt. He was very accountable. He was pretty tough on himself, I thought, too, because he wasn't the only player that had some things that they wish had gone differently in the first game. And, you know, you win, lose, and tie as a team. But, yeah, for Justin, very respected guy, very tough guy, and he's played a lot of football. He's had some serious injuries. He's had a knee issue for a while. But, yeah, it's a non-football illness. It's not because of his knee. It's basically his reaction to that game and how he's feeling. And, yeah, just wish him the best, and did reach out and give him my support. Didn't hear back from him as I had during happier times when he signed his contract. But, yeah, just wish Justin well. And I think for everyone, you know, especially when someone's dealing with something that is personal, you know, you have to – you don't always want to say so much, but obviously the trigger for this is the game. But yeah, for Justin, you know, he's dealing with this, and you know, with his family and, you know, his teammates, they have his back, and He has to miss at least 4 games. Whether he'll be back, I wouldn't expect that, but that he can always change his mind, and then the team would have to evaluate how do they feel about it, because obviously he's chosen to not be with the team. He's welcome, but this is his decision, and he has not replied to some teammates that have tried to reach out. But I think everyone understands that football and life, just very personal things, and for Justin, this is his time to evaluate things, including does he want to continue to play? And when I say contemplate options, one option can be retirement. Every player has a decision to make. Do you want to keep playing football, or do you want to move on to other things? But he's had a proud, great career, and he might feel differently about it. Who knows? He's under contract. He could decide in the offseason or later this season if he wants to play. But he has to miss at least 4 weeks procedurally. But yeah, Cody, I think it'll just be, in fact, I know it'll be Scott Quesenberry, and then they can up Jimmy Morrissey from the practice squad if they choose to have him back up Scott Quesenberry. And you also have Justin McCray, who can play all 3 interior line positions. So you have some depth at center. And I thought Scott held his own against a really good nose tackle from the Broncos, DJ Jones.
And speaking of Scott, can you just talk about what has been some of your evaluation? How much better do you believe the Houston Texans offensive line got with Scott being in the lineup?
They had some improvement in terms of pass protection because of his movement. He's a pretty quick lineman. He's a former All Pac-12 selection. He was a 5th-round pick coming out of the Chargers. And, at UCLA, he was a good football player. He's also the 3rd Quesenberry brother to play for the team following Paul Quesenberry, David Quesenberry. I thought that he held his own against DJ Jones. He did get shoved back a few times. DJ's significantly bigger than Scott, but I thought the pass pro for the most part was solid, and his run blocking, he was good at some of the double teams and working in tandem with Kenyon Green. And AJ Cann's opinion said he played his ass off, so he thought he played well and that they didn't miss a beat. But obviously you're going to be supportive of your teammates. I would say it was at least solid. It wasn't like he played badly. I think he played well enough to stay out there and that they don't have to bring in another center other than promoting a center. They did work out some guards the other day, Keaton Sutherland and Parker Ferguson. They brought in Tyrone Wheatley Jr. for a visit, and Tyrone is signed with the Browns practice squad. So they're looking at offensive linemen, whether they need to sign someone. I don't believe they do at this point other than practice squad depth. So there could be a practice squad move because they could make a change. If Morrissey goes up, then it creates an opening for another offensive lineman.
Now, Aaron, one of the biggest news that you had an opportunity to report on yesterday was the reconstruction of Brandon Cooks' contract. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I think it went from somewhere in the ballpark of $10 million to $9 million. Is there anything we can really look into that, or do you think Nick Caserio is just trying to work some magic in hopes of improving this roster as the season continues?
Oh, no, this is strictly an accounting move. So what they did, Cody, is they converted $831,111 of his $2 million base salary into a signing bonus that creates $554,000 in cap savings. And it's just an accounting move because they only have $1.866 million in cap space. And so his base salary is now down to $1.12 million. From he played one game at the $2 million rate, and he had the 2-year, $39 million extension in April. So you look at what they've done with Brandon, and they already did restructures for Desmond King, Cameron Johnston, and Kaimi Fairburn. So they're looking for money when they have to place a player on injured reserve. They have to replace that salary because the salary still counts with another salary. And unlike the offseason when it's just the top 51 salaries that count, it's all 53 salaries on the active roster that count against the cap. And you need to have money for your practice squad. You need to have money for all those things. So it's about cap, not cash. And there's really nothing right now that they're going to spend it on. But, we'll see how they will handle it. I expect Justin Britt to continue to be paid, for instance, even though he's on the reserve non-football illness list. And teams do have a right, if they want to not pay a player when they're on a non-football injury or non-football illness. I don't believe they'll be doing that. My understanding is that they would be very unlikely to do that with Britt. So we'll see what happens next with Justin, and that also affects their cap savings depending on what he decides to do. If he was to retire, he would be off their books. So if he does retire, they could take him off of their salary list and they would get some cap relief. But that's not what they're about. They're have compassion and empathy for Justin, because obviously it's very emotional for him. But yeah, with Brandon, he was just helping them out, as did those other players. You're still paid the same amount. It's just a matter of you get it all at once, which most people, for example, like had a business deal with someone and they are asking me, did you want to be paid once or once a month? And I said, once is fine. And so yeah, everyone, I guess, would probably choose that option most of the time rather than once a month if you could have it all in a lump sum. But yeah, that's what they did with Brandon. They paid him almost half of his salary, but he had already received a $16 million signing bonus from the Texans. So, it's not like, basically it's just accounting, and they don't even have to ask his permission. They can simply do it anytime they want to, generally is the language, in terms of simple conversions where the player's not losing any money. But yeah, Brandon is a team first guy, so he's happy to help the team out.
Aaron, last question before we move on and start talking about, stuff that's going on the field and, of course, the game Sunday against the Chicago Bears. This backfield, a lot of questions. From what you can share, for what you have been able to analyze, why did the Texans decide to depart from Marlon Mack, and why is it that it seemed like they favor Mack over Rex Burkhead?
Right. Why cut Marlon, then cut him, then put him in the practice squad, and then
cut him
in the practice squad?
Yeah, and then in the midst of all this,
Right. My understanding is he's now with the 49ers and has been promoted to the active roster. So he's with the 49ers, which arguably is a better football team. So that makes sense for him. But yeah, I think he just wasn't happy being on the practice squads. If you look at it just from an emotional standpoint and status, he was RB1 the entire offseason, majority of the preseason, then beaten out by the rookie, then accepts a practice squad spot, then probably thinks things over and decides, you know what, I don't know if this is for me. They release him. And I think, yes, he is a different back than Burkhead, and I think he can make some things happen in terms of ability to, break a long run, which is what they need. I think he'd be an ideal backup, but they do like Burkhead's special teams ability. They like his pass blocking, his pass catching. So he has a lot of skills in other areas, and, he's their kind of guy. And with Marlon, I think he has a good attitude. It's just a matter of, he was expecting one thing, which was to start and possibly, split some time with Dameon Pierce, and that's not what happened. And some of that's from performance, and some of that's just how well Dameon performed more than anything. But yeah, that's the reason why. And some of this is just free choice. And, he's choosing to be with the 49ers.
BetOnline.net is your number one source for all of your pro and college football betting needs and sports info this season. What you can do is find all of the latest football league developments, game matchups, news, podcasts, including this year's opening week's games. BetOnline is also your continued source for all of your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your favorite sports and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about all of the trends, come on now, and action happening at BetOnline, because BetOnline is where the game starts. Thanks for making Locked On Texans your first listen every day. Now make your second listen the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson give you the expert NFL analysis in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts.
And continuing here with this latest installment of Locked On Texans, we have our guy, NFL and Houston Texans beat reporter, Mr. Aaron Wilson from Pro Football Network. Aaron, As of right now, the Houston Texans stand at 0-1-1. I know that is a weird record to say, but Aaron, what has been your evaluation throughout these first two games, especially given the disappointing play as of right now with Davis Mills?
Right. It's really the fourth quarter. Obviously, they've been outscored 27-0 margin combined against the Colts and Broncos. And Davis Mills, I believe he's 5 for 16 passing in the fourth quarter. So, he's got to be sharper later in the game. And all these 3 and outs are affecting everything. It has a trickle-down effect for the defense. And they're tired. It's one of the reasons they're playing a lot of snaps, but they're also having to be on the field for an inordinate amount of time. So this is affecting everything. And he isn't committing turnovers. I understand that, other than he's fumbled once and lost, and he's fumbled twice, but they were recovered against the Broncos. But he's got to, place the football more accurately. He's got to make his process faster, and he's got to make better decisions. And, the touchdown that should have happened when he threw low to Brandon Cooks, and Brandon wasn't able to haul it in. Technically, it was a drop, but it was also a poor throw. Chris Moore was wide open, and that was one of his reads. But almost everything is there's a pre-read, whether he's going to go to the player, and then there's another read. It's pretty much 2 reads. He has a couple of options. He never really gets to the third progression very often. So almost all the time he's going with his primary option, the way the plays are drawn up. And he's just got to throw the football better. He can play better than this. We saw that last year, but it is something of a regression through 2 games for Davis Mills. He hasn't played terribly, but he certainly hasn't played well. It's, I would say average, mildly mediocre, nothing, that's saying I'm the long-term answer, which is obviously what this season is, an entire treatise on. Does he have the potential to be, QB1 here for the future? Obviously, after the last game, you got to say no. That didn't look like someone that you'd want to commit to for 2023, but it's a long season. Let's see how he plays. I think that you have to do wait and see mode with Davis Mills right now. But, even if he does well against Chicago, which he could, and, they have a very poor run defense, that might be a great game for Dameon Pierce. Hint, hint, fantasy football managers and owners. But I really feel like for Davis, he's going to have to spread the football around and become a more complete quarterback in terms of occasionally moving, throwing on the move. He's got to get himself going. And we're not seeing a lot of movement from him. And he's kind of a sitting duck there in the pocket. Pass pro is okay. It's not enough that they can't block people to the point where they can't win. He was sacked 3 times, but that was Randy Gregory and Bradley Chubb. And I thought Titus Howard and Laramie Tunsil, for the most part, they really held their own. I thought Laramie had some very good moments. But, it's not a ton of lapses where these guys are wrecking the game. The other teams get paid too, and they're supposed to sack the quarterback occasionally and hit the quarterback.
Aaron, what has been your evaluation as of right now? Like I said, I know it's still early, but what has been your evaluation of the rookie class? I know Derek Stingley Jr. had his moments where you might have been left scratching your head, but at the end of the day, I love Sunday's game. Very pleased by what I saw from him on the field.
Right, kind of a mixed bag, right, for Derek, where, yes, he was picked on, but it's Russell Wilson, who's a Super Bowl quarterback. It's Carolyn Sutton, one of the biggest, if not the biggest wide receiver in the NFL. I think nearly 6'5", almost 220. Not the fastest guy, but fast enough for a big man. And he's basically open regardless of whether he's covered because he's bigger than you, and he can jump very high. He's from Brenham, too. He's from SMU, so he's a Texas guy. I think that you're asking a lot for a guy in his second NFL game to just shut him down. And that was the focal point once Jerry Jeudy injured his ribs, for them to go to Sutton heavily. And, I mean, again, this is Russell Wilson. They're going to get some, plays on you. I'm not alarmed by anything that happened. I thought that he held his own, and I think Lovie Smith was right. It was solid. He was competing. He's not afraid to tackle. He's not afraid to challenge receivers. And occasionally you win some, you lose some. And I think, he was, if you look at the red zone, the way he was competing in there. Did prevent a touchdown. It was ruled a touchdown, but it was overturned. But he was in tight enough coverage to prevent the touchdown. I think Cody, he's a bright spot. He's not weak link or anything.
Yeah.
But I do think that at one point they were having enough success that maybe you should have tried Steve Nelson just in terms of trying to win the football game because Sutton was such a weapon. I don't believe that it was on him, the 35-yarder. I think that Jonathan Owens gave up too much depth, and it was a cover 2 zone play. So a lot of people initially thought, is that man? No, it was zone. So it's on both of them, but it could have been handled better. And I look at that play and think that was a really pivotal moment in the game because after that, they throw the game-winning touchdown 3 plays later.
Yeah, you're right about that. Aaron, last question before getting out of here. You are in as a NFL beat reporter beyond the Houston Texans. As you know, week 3, the Texans play the Chicago Bears. When you look at that matchup, is there anything outside of course, their run defense that you just mentioned, but is there anything that you can say if the Houston Texans go into Chicago and they do X, Y, and Z well, they can possibly win their first game of the regular season?
Need to keep containment on Justin Fields, dangerous runner, talented young quarterback, very physically talented and an improving young player. Need to tackle David Montgomery. David Montgomery, very quick, very shifty runner. I'm still not convinced that this run defense is where it needs to be. You saw a lot of success from Javonte Williams and the first week, Jonathan Taylor. Now they face another good running back who I think in many ways may be as quicker than those guys. A little smaller back, but I think he's the kind of back that could give these guys trouble because it's not power that's beating them. It's speed and quickness and moves. So, yeah, they're giving up a lot of rushing yards, and David Montgomery is no slouch. It will help them that Velus Jones Jr., he was doubtful for the last game, didn't play. If he misses this game again, very explosive rookie wide receiver. And, I don't think they quite have enough weapons, but, the Bears are not a very good team. To me, if they can't beat the Bears, then I'm going to question how many games are they going to win this year. It's going to be 3. Is it going to even get to 4? This is the kind of game they have to win. Yeah. And I think the offensive line for Chicago is probably the weakness that they'll be able to exploit because this is a solid Texans front, and I don't think they can block the Texans. And that's why, other than a running game and Fields scrambling around, I just can't see them having a lot of problems with this offense. And then the other side of the ball, obviously, they need to block Roquan Smith, one of the best linebackers in the NFL. But, that's not a special defense by any stretch. There is no Khalil Mack this time. They have some good football players, but they don't have enough of them. And that's a reason why they have a new regime in place with Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus, because the previous regime failed. And the Bears are very much a rebuild.
Aaron, I'm glad that you said it. This is a must-win game. And by any chance, if the Texans do not win this game, do you see a major shakeup happening? Whether it be them, meaning roster changes, meaning Lovie Smith possibly changing the starting lineup or whatever the case might be, because I hate knowing that we are going into the 3rd game of the season. We're already saying that this is a must-win.
Well, I think it's a little more complicated than that in the way I look at it. Must win would kind of connote that this team was supposed to win. Mm-hmm. And we still don't know that they were really supposed to be a winner. They feel like a more competitive team. Mm-hmm. They have made some improvements, but this isn't a very talented roster where you can say they have a lot of guys. They have a lot of solid guys, but they don't have a lot of Pro Bowl players. They have Laramie Tunsil and Brandon Cooks. Outside of that, who is a Pro Bowl caliber player? Couldn't really say anybody, right?
No.
So if I was to tell you have a roster with 2 Pro Bowl guys and a bunch of other guys that are just like pretty good or solid, you wouldn't think it's very talented, right? So if they lose to Chicago, it'll be disappointing, and everyone will say, they're just going to be a team that's playing for, possibly the top pick. That's what people will say about it. But the funny thing is, and, I think draft position and the big picture are probably more important ultimately than this season in the long run. But the bigger thing is finding out, can Davis Mills be the guy? And we have all said that umpteen times. I really feel like in terms of change, who would you put in? If you're talking about, like, is Farrell Brown still starting? Is O.J. Howard? Okay, well, O.J. plays plenty of snaps already. There's no one on the offensive line that you can make the argument that you could switch to, unless Kenyon Green, like, struggles. You could go back to Justin McCray. Obviously, A.J. Cann, I think, has been pretty good through a couple games. The tackles are the most talented guys you have out there. On the defensive line, maybe you can make an argument that Rasheem Green should play even more. If he's healthy again, he's healthy. Last week, and he has 1.5 sacks. There's no one in the secondary that I would put in. Those safeties, they have the best safeties out there that can play, the best corners, the best nickel. This is your roster. I don't foresee any changes, and I don't think he would, move on from any of his coaches. So I think they would just stay with the status quo and hope that they can coach these guys up better. I don't foresee a shakeup happening, no.
Aaron Wilson from Pro Football Network. Aaron, really quick, where can our listeners follow you out on social media?
Yeah, I'm at Aaron Wilson _NFL. Instagram, Aaron Wilson 7128. On the internet, www.profootballnetwork.com. And I'm also on www.click2houston.com and Sports Talk 790. I think since the last time we talked, signed with NBC Houston, KPRC, Channel 2. So, yeah, happy to be working with Randy McElroy and Ari and Chancellor. So, yeah, it's exciting to be partnered with them and provide Texans coverage for them on a local level. So, yeah, just very, very excited about working with those guys, doing some writing, television, podcasting, and just anything they need.
Awesome. Sounds good. And as always, you can follow me and John. Subscribe to the podcast on YouTube and on your favorite podcast streaming services. Follow my co-host John _Hickman12 on Twitter. And you can follow me, Cody M. Davis, on Twitter at Cody Davis _24. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.